How did Keith and the ladies get here? Accused of being yet another pyramid scheme? And worse, some sort of kooky cult? It couldn't have been Keith's fault, of course. No, it was the haters, like Tony Natali, Edgar Bronfman Sr., and Rick Ross. Could ESP successfully reinvent themselves after such bad press? Well, one thing was for certain. Now Keith was out for blood. By the end of 2003, Keith was concerned about only two things: getting back into the business and getting his revenge on those who had spoken ill of him in the recent past. Barbara Boucher, Keith's public girlfriend, was vital to Keith maintaining his image of monogamy, but she was stubbornly unaccepting of his desire to run a harem. Boucher was probably missing those days when Keith seemed so innocent and sweet. He would play the piano and bring tears to your eyes, she said. He slept in my bed. I made breakfast for him in the morning. I sat on the couch with him and watched Star Trek. Carol Mead of Art Voice said, ESP NXIVM is, in the very early part of a person's exposure to it, a way to move past roadblocks that were keeping a person from achieving whatever success meant to them. It was not considered integrated to have an issue with Keith's lifestyle choices. And yet, if Barbara wanted to date another man, Keith claimed they were intimately connected and that he may have to kill him. Barbara remained to try to make it be the best possible resource for bettering ourselves and the world, says Mead. She attempted to address his dishonesty with him, to try to get him to use his talents she knew he had to help others without lying or cheating on women. She began to ask Keith to pay back the money he borrowed from her and lost. But along with blaming her for cosmically messing with his financial vibes, he began to claim it was a gift and would not return it. Besides, Keith owed far more to Claire and Sarah Bronfman, the heirs of the Seagram's fortune. After the dreaded Forbes article, Vanity Fair quoted, "People at NXIVM were stunned." Expecting a positive story, the top ranks had spoken to Forbes, including Sarah Bronfman, Nancy Salzman, and even Keith Raniere. What upset them above all were Edgar Bronfman's remarks. "I think it's a cult," he told the magazine, going on to say he was troubled about the emotional and financial investment in NXIVM by his daughters, to whom he had not spoken in months. Keith had to get back at them for damaging his fragile reputation. Keith and Nancy had come up with a model called Rational Inquiry, a Bible of punishment tactics. In NXIVM, ethics always superseded rules, like immigration or tax laws. Lesbians consider it routine to break so-called rules and uphold so-called ethics, and Raniere is the ultimate authority on these ethics. Of course, the NXIVM philosophy on crime and punishment is both a total non sequitur. The justification presented for it in the patent application is laughable, and contrary to the hard-won lessons of Western civilizations. We have rules and laws because, even though they are imperfect, they are intended to be precise and to attempt to allow judgment by fair process. Judging every action of others subjectively by unwritten ethical principles is a recipe for dictatorship. It got far more literal than this. Quote, NXIVM's inner circle were reportedly taught that, in the past lives, they were high-ranking Nazis. Barbara Boucher was reportedly the reincarnation of Holocaust architect Reinhard Heydrich, while Nancy Salzman was supposed to be the reincarnation of Hitler. Raniere claimed to have been the leader of anti-Nazi partisans. According to a complaint formed by a former NXIVM member, a medical doctor performed an experiment on her that involved recording her EEG responses while viewing footage of people being murdered, rather like Alex from A Clockwork Orange. If Ranieri was willing to punish his own patrons in this way, how far do you think he would go to attack his enemies? NXIVM, of course, taught that some people, those who chose to leave Ranieri's teachings, would try to impede the progress of everyone else. Anyone who irrevocably turned against the vanguard were said to have undergone the fall and were labeled, in the words of a former member, as Luciferians, lost people for whom bad feels good and good feels bad. Keith had to bring down these defectors. His first attacks were on Tony, of course, typical bullying stuff like stealing her mail. But later on, Natalie would write, "Someone would break into my home, mess my bed, open the cabinets in the kitchen, rearrange the artwork on my wall, and make off with some of my clothes. This happened more than a dozen times and was extremely terrifying. I did not feel safe in my own home. I'd pack up my dogs and go to a hotel." After being diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder in 2004, Natalie says one of her beloved dogs, a German Shepherd named Jake, got sick after eating what she thought was a bad batch of dog food. "I brought him to the vet," she said. "I was hysterical, but there was nothing to be done." Years later, another of Ranieri's girlfriends, Kristen Keefe, reportedly hinted to Natalie that a private detective in charge of staking out her house had poisoned the dog. And Rick Ross? Well, they tried to appeal to a higher court and were denied. Keith doggedly pursued the copyright law as though the rest of it was completely unimportant. Ranieri reportedly blamed Claire Bronfman for the bad publicity, faulting her for telling her father about the $2 million loan. According to Wikipedia, she installed keylogger software on her father's computer, allowing members to access his emails for years thereafter. From 2007 to 2009, at the direction of Ranieri, Claire employed private firms to investigate perceived enemies of the group, including 6 federal judges. The email hacking was beginning to be a bit of an enterprise, and something Keith was rumored to have used in more political movements. Perhaps as another way of showing her support, Claire used her vast resources to help Keith. Her victims described her as a predator and a dangerous megalomaniac, suing them relentlessly and leaving lives ruined. Claire consistently leveraged her wealth and social status as a means of intimidating, controlling, and punishing opponents of NXIVM. Simply the threat of her exacting revenge on individuals who challenged its dogmas was enough to keep people quiet for years. In yet another lawsuit in 2005, Joseph O'Hara, the former owner of a semi-pro basketball team, was charged with cheating the company and 11 plaintiffs of roughly $2.5 million in payments and loans. He was NXIVM's attorney for a time, and they claimed O'Hara built hundreds of thousands of dollars in business deals from which he profited, kickbacks, and fraudulent claims. O'Hara said the $2 million loans were arranged by Salzman, and he defended them as legitimate and well-documented. No payments were due on the loans until December 31st, 2006. The lawsuit was ludicrous and totally without merit. His own firm decided to stop working with NXIVM after a thorough review of the company. The suit alludes to NXIVM's trying for a $20 million contribution to a tax-exempt foundation to pursue scientific. However, despite Keith's aggressive plans, one by one, each of his lawsuits were thrown out. In Keith's world, things were looking up. By November of 2003, about 4,000 students had taken courses since the program's inception. In addition to the Colony and Saratoga Springs, NXIVM now held classes in Boston, Manhattan, Seattle, as well as Anchorage and Mexico, and it was looking to expand into Germany and England. Level 1 of Origins courses cost about $250 for 4 two-hour sessions. Level 2 or intensives run $7,500 for a 16-day. In some cases, a student is not a good candidate for the more advanced sessions, Ranieri said. But training for higher-level business executives costs $10,000 for 5 days, and highly handled sessions are held in remote areas and can cost anywhere from $100,000 to $1 million. And they had plans to build a large facility in Half Moon of a 68,000 square foot building off Wooden Road. The architecturally futuristic building would be a contribution to civilization, would house offices, classrooms, a gym, physical therapy areas, and other health-related services such as a pool and sleeping rooms. In 2006, Sarah bought an apartment in the Trump International Hotel and Tower on Central Park West for about $6.45 million. Nancy Salzman was using the apartment, and two other sources reported that she was flying all around in a private jet owned by the two sisters. Both of the heiresses had settled very close to NXIVM headquarters. Claire Bronfman purchased an estate. Claire Bronfman had purchased a $2.3 million estate in Knox, a Greek revival home from about 1799. It included 234 acres, 3 houses, a 10-stall stable, and a carriage house. Then, as if the stars aligned, a big wave was about to hit. The Secret. This movement wasn't new, but the trend really did catch on. The idea of focusing on what you want with 100% confidence was easily meshed with Rainieri's sayings. In 2004, What the Bleep Do We Know by Mark Vicente hit, and he became a target of the NXIVM recruiters. More people were joining along the coast. And NXIVM itself was morphing and changing into something new. Espions were working diligently on what they thought was helping the world, but was actually carefully rebuilding Rainieri's image for him. An article in 2003 quoted a 33-year-old Kristen Keefe saying, "I couldn't find anything close to it. I had complete radical shift in career change and a capacity almost overnight. It improved my memory, my logic, and everything dramatically." But there were far more sinister events in Keith's orbit around this time as well. Kristen Marie Snyder's life as an espion lasted just 4 months. She was a farm girl who loved outdoor sports, was happy and very level-headed. She graduated from the Franciscan University in Ohio. She earned a master's degree in plant ecology at the University of Kentucky, where she established a campus chapter of Habitat for Humanity. In the summer, she would go home to South Carolina to work as a cotton scout. Later, Kristen started her own ecological consulting firm, taking on projects in several states. In '99, she moved to Alaska because she fell in love, both with the place and with Heidi Clifford, her domestic partner. Her love of the outdoors drew her to join the Anchorage Nordic Ski Patrol. She was qualified in survival training and avalanche rescue. An ESP student she met in Anchorage invited her to seminars, where she became fascinated with the videotapes of Rainieri and Salzman. Kristen Snyder's first 16-day ESP intensive course was taught by Salzman in Anchorage in November about 2002. Kristen ate it up and demanded more, her partner said. She was an overachiever, and she believed ESP could improve her career, her personal life, and her outlook, just as advertised. The Snyders said that they knew something had changed in Kristen when she visited the family on their 300-acre cotton farm a few weeks after her first intensive. They said they hardly recognized the tearful and angry woman. When her parents challenged her about NXIVM, Kristen would cut off the discussion and telephone her ESP coach. She said, "We can do anything we want to." She thought Keith was incredible. Kristen Snyder visited ESP headquarters in Half Moon several days in January 2003 to learn more about the group. When she returned to Anchorage, she was sleep-deprived and seemed irrational, but intent to start another $7,000 16-day intensive. She went to Albany and said, "Vanguard doesn't sleep, so I don't need to sleep," Clifford said. NXIVM's customs made her very uncomfortable, but Heidi signed up for an ESP intensive to support her partner. Kristen became emotionally disturbed on around the 10th day of that session, but a NXIVM instructor told Heidi and other students to ignore suicide threats Kristen was making, saying they were just attempts at getting noticed. "I was told," said Heidi, "not to bring her to the hospital. That's what makes me feel really bad." During the training, Kristen Snyder came to believe that she had been sexually abused as a child and that she could not remember parts of her past. In the last days, she became so consumed with remembering strange details of her early childhood that she often called her parents just to ask mundane memories, such as the costume her sister wore one Halloween. The Snyders said they have no reason to suspect their daughter was ever molested. But when she last spoke to her parents, Kristen told them that she was responsible for the explosion of the Space Shuttle Columbia. Heidi Clifford, in a telephone interview, recalled seeing her distraught partner leave the Westmark Hotel in Anchorage, where the NXIVM training was held. After being rebuffed for medical attention, Kristen Snyder left the hotel. Clearly upset, she waved to Heidi through a window as she walked away. No one has seen her since. Alaska State Police investigators believe that Kristen drove the couple's Toyota Tacoma to a campground along Resurrection Bay in Seward. Before dawn of February 7th, they theorized she paddled a creaky 16-foot kayak into the bay and intentionally capsized in the glacier-fed water. Her last words were scribbled in a spiral notebook found in her truck. They said, "I attended a course called ESP, aka NXIVM, based out of Anchorage, Alaska, and Albany, New York. I was brainwashed, and my emotional center of the brain was killed/turned off. I still have feeling in my external skin, but my internal organs are rotting. Please contact my parents if you find me or this note. I am sorry. I am sorry, life. I didn't know I was already dead. May we persist into the future." On a second page, she wrote, "No need to search for my body." An extensive search turned up no trace of Kristen or the kayak. She is listed as missing and presumed dead, and authorities doubt her body will ever be recovered. Alaska State Trooper Paul Randall said the investigation of Snyder's disappearance confirmed the assessment of her partner and family. She had no history of psychiatric or emotional problems before becoming involved with NXIVM. Other notes were found written by Kristen during the week of her disappearance, and they indicated a sort of mental breakdown after becoming associated with ESP. For Kristen's parents and Heidi Clifford, the loss is deeply felt and lasting. "I feel empty," said Heidi. "She's totally not here because of something really stupid." Though no body had been found, memorial services for Kristen Snyder were held